Hey, it's Andrew, and today we're going to work on a feature wall. We're going to turn this to this. Stick around and see how it's done. Today we're going to conclude this wall space. If you didn't check it out last video, I showed you how to make this floating shelf. It definitely adds a nice little element to this wall. So now that you've seen the after photo, you can kind of see where we're going to go with the direction of this wall. We're going to add some three-dimensional aspect to it to give it a bit of a pop. We had some leftover 5/8 MDF from our shelf here, and that's what we're going to use to build this project, so it's extremely cost effective. If you don't want to go with something like MDF and you're in a high traffic area, I do recommend going with something like a poplar. It's a paint grade wood and it can withstand a little bit more wear and tear. Well, let's get this build started. We're going to start off by removing the baseboard. We're just scoring the caulking from the edge, so that way when we pry it off the wall, it doesn't take the paint and everything with it. We're replacing it because if we were to place the strapping and butt it up against the existing baseboard, it would look a little funny. So we're going to replace it with the same thickness material. Just a quick side note here. I do have a couple holes that I just noticed on the wall and a screw with an anchor, so I'm going to pull that and then I'm going to spackle the holes and everything, and hopefully by the time I go to the wall it's all dry, that way I can sand it. The reason why I want to quickly jump into wall prep is so that it doesn't slow me down later on due to the dry time of the spackling. It is important to do proper wall prep, such as scraping blemishes and sanding things smooth, as you'll see the imperfections with the sheen of the paint once you're done, and it's too late. So take your time. Here you see me cutting out the notch in the baseboard for the flat stock I'm putting in. The easiest way to do this, like I'm doing here, is with an oscillating saw. A Dremel or any other kind of multi-tool works just as well. If that's not an option, perhaps a straight edge and a utility knife with multiple scores could work. You'll see I use a scrap piece equal to the thickness of the flat stock as a guide. This eliminates the margin of error done by freehand. Once you think you're through all the way, take your utility knife to cut through the remaining caulking and help pry it out. Alright guys, we have our spot cut for our baseboard that we're going to put in on that side, and way in here on this corner on that side. So now we're good to go with the baseboard. We'll cut that to size and we'll put it in. Going to the table saw, we're going to rip our width of the flat stock, which in this case I want to match the same height as the regular baseboard. We then go to the miter saw to cut to length, keeping in mind we don't want to fight with it to get it into place, so I cut it about 1/8 to 1/4 shorter than what I measured. Grab yourself a scrap piece and tap it in on either end until you get a nice snug fit. Here I'm using a laser line to mark out the stud locations on the wall, that way it's easier when it comes time to install. So we're now at the stage where we can design our wall space. I have something jotted down here. I'm going to translate what I have on the page to the wall and see if I like it. As this is an abstract design, there is no right or wrong, but I will say that certain combinations of lines will pull parts of it together. It is nice to have someone to help hold certain pieces along the way during install, to help visualize if you're uncertain about something. For the design, I decided that I wanted 2 inches of paneling and it was going to be on a 45-degree plane. If you want to play with different angles, that's fine, but the math gets a bit trickier. I kept it simple with just 90 and 45-degree cuts for this build. So guys, I got my first piece cut, ready to go. I'm going to put it in, see how it fits, see if I like it where it is. So I'm going to line up the bottom first and then adjust from there and push in where need be. So I want the bottom flush with my reference surface, and then push it in horizontally to get it nice and flush here at the bottom. And then what I should have here is no gap here and no gap there, which is what I have. And just to verify, you can use a speed square. That looks pretty good to me. While nailing it in, mind the stud locations and nail to them as much as possible to suck the material into the wall for a nice flush finish. Also keep in mind the thickness of the material relative to your nail size, meaning you don't want super long nails if you have thin material. People always forget that there might be electrical, plumbing, or gas behind the walls. Ensuring 1 inch into the stud is plenty. In this case, my material is 5/8 and the drywall is 1/2 inch, so a 2-inch nail is enough. For the most part, all my cuts were done in approximation except for the top right corner. I wanted equal spacing there. So guys, our strapping is up now. Now we gotta go back to our nail heads and set them. That way we can go back with some spackling and make it nice and flush. Sometimes the nails don't break the surface of the material, so it's important to sink them to then go back and cover them up. We then are ready for caulking the seams. A bucket with some soapy water and a rag will help keep the mess contained. The trick to tidy joints is to cut a small hole on an angle on your caulking tube and run your caulking gun on a slant as opposed to perpendicular to the wall. Alright, it's the next day. Everything looks like it dried okay. Now we can go ahead and sand. After finishing this project, I realized a couple of things that could have streamlined this process and resulted in a much cleaner finish. One being to sand the edges and corners of your molding outside prior to install to avoid any mess inside your house. Second, paint your molding and wall before install. This avoids a lot of unnecessary paint cutting. That's it for this build. If you like these last couple of videos, I do have a few more projects in store as I'm enjoying putting these together. If you have any project ideas that you'd like to see covered, let me know in the comments. Lastly, please like and subscribe to keep up to date with my content. Thanks for watching.